The greatest road in Lusaka, where the University of Zambia is, and the Jumbo Drive on the Copper Belt in Kitwe, where the Copper Belt University is found, have arguably been characterized by student riots than any other place in the country. These riots have become a yearly occurrence. On today's program, News in Depth, we're trying to examine the root cause and the genesis of these challenges. We will be speaking to several stakeholders. I'm your host for this week. My name is Masao Somkwayaya. Stay tuned. When Zambia got its independence 51 years ago, there were only about 107 university graduates in the country. All graduates at the time are said to have done their studies in foreign countries. Having attained independence, Zambia was in dire need of professional and skillful men and women who would steer different sectors of the country to social, political, and economic success. But there was one piece missing on the Zambian puzzle of success: a university. The 107 graduates at that time were not enough to amplify on the foundation that the white colonialists had left. Education commentators attribute the low number of degree holders at that time to lack of an indigenous university in the country. As a matter of consequence, the then United Nations Independence Party UNIP government, led by Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, embarked on the construction of an indigenous university which would become to be known as the University of Zambia, UNZA. In 1966, Zambians had an indigenous university, the UNZA, which was strongly seen as a source of national unity and pride because it brought together learners from all parts of the country into one space at the Great East Road UNZA main campus. But the pride that the university brought to the country will soon be put under scrutiny. This is because the students at the university are now engaging in riots, demonstrations, and protests barely a decade after the opening of the university. With the onset of the riots, the contribution of the university to national unity is now slowly and loosely hanging in the hands of the students themselves. According to a report titled "The Consciousness and Contradiction," a study of student protests in Zambia that was published in the British Journal of Sociology in March 1976, Zambian student protests were in support of government policy. Particularly prominent in these demonstrations was the expression of hostility towards Britain for her implicit or explicit recognition of regimes to Zambia's South Rhodesia and South Africa. Protests outside the British High Commission had become an annual event in which students richly affirmed their solidarity with the nation's political leadership. The report indicates that in 1971, students protested outside the French embassy situated in Lusaka over the rights granted to South Africa to manufacture Mirage jet fighters. A few days later, the then University of Zambia Chancellor, who was also the Republican President Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, closed down the university indefinitely, arising from the student protests at the French embassy. The 1971 UNZA closure is said to have been the first time the institution was being closed because of violent student riots. Since UNZA was the only university in the country, it was overwhelmed by the number of people seeking higher education. This led to government erecting the Copperbelt University, CBU, in 1987. The Copperbelt University was initially set up to supplement University of Zambia in providing higher education to the Zambian people. In recent times, student riots have been reported to have been sparked by various reasons ranging from lack of water, power on campus, or the government's alleged failure to release student allowances on time. The Southern Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes, SACOD, views the student riots are instigated by the failure of both the students and the government to engage each other in dialogue whenever they are faced with challenges.
also be good for students to be proactive in constructive engagement, continuously try to seek meetings with the government, but also with management at the higher learning institutions. But it is important to understand that there are certain things that cannot delay, over a certain period of time. And in as much as we want to call for peaceful demonstrations within a given time frame, there has to be a limit, maybe a week, if you will, so that beyond that, whatever grievances are addressed, because you want to avoid as much as possible creeping in desperation into people.
The government under the Ministry of Higher Education manages student sponsorship annual program called the Bursary Committee Education Sponsorship, coined by the students as the BC. The University of Zambia, UNZA, and the Copperbelt University, CBU, enroll most of the students on such kind of sponsorship. The bursary package comprises allowances such as the book allowances, project allowance, and meal allowance. These allowances that are given to students at particular intervals are meant to help the students to effectively meet their academic needs. The students allege that government usually delay to release these allowances. These institutions with the most students benefiting from government sponsorship at times turn into something that one can describe as mini war zones. Whenever students from University of Zambia and the Copperbelt University are faced with challenges, they usually resort to riotous behavior. A year rarely goes by without witnessing demonstrations, protests, or riots by students at these two higher institutions of learning. But the underlying question which many stakeholders are seeking answers to is why are the students whose defining activity is studying so easily turned into stone-hailing students?
Looking at the most of the riots that are happening that happens at the University of Zambia is because of late payments of our allowances. Yeah. So the other riot that we had, it was because the students, they wanted, new allowance increment, busy increment. So the thing is that you find that when the government delays to pay them the new allowances, they protest, and this is sometimes due to the lack of that communication between the bursaries committee and the students. For instance, this protest,
the Ministry of Higher Education is wondering why the students attribute their riotous behavior to government's alleged delay in releasing allowances. This is because the student bursary agreement forms clearly states that government will release the BC's allowances as and when funds are available.
Our students, meaning the students we sponsor at the two universities, are aware that the allowances in some cases will be delayed. How are they aware? They are aware because they sign the bursary forms, and those bursary forms are contractual. And in the bursary forms, we have clearly stated as government that allowances will only be paid when they are available. So today they cannot say they are going to the streets because the allowances are delayed. Because they are aware that if the allowances are not available, will not be paid. That's the contract that they have entered. So they cannot today turn and say we cannot go to, we cannot learn, we are going to the streets to break people's vehicles, or to stone people's vehicles, or stone people, or run battles with the police because we haven't been paid. When they are aware that the allowances will be delayed, or will only be paid when they are available.
But the students have alleged that they are always ready to engage government in constructive dialogue.
No, it's not that maybe violence, that is we take it to air our grievances. We engage in dialogue, But the dialogue that we engage ourselves in, we find sometimes it's not fruitful. We are the middle people between the government and the students. Now, as the middlemen, when we call to say, when is the bursary coming in? Okay, it will be coming on Monday. Do not going to tell the students the meal allowances will be in on Monday. But we have not been told that it's only half amount which will be there. Okay, now the thing is that we find that actually, even us will be in a situation whereby it's beyond our control as a union. But we will try to calm the students to say, no, okay, let's engage into dialogue.
The Ministry of Higher Education, on the other hand, says it's loyal to honor its obligation towards the few privileged students whom it sponsors.
It's not true that the government does not want to pay. We have made a commitment as a government to pay the allowances. We have made a commitment as government to meet these commitments as the money is available. That's our commitment.
Whenever the riots take place, private property and other infrastructure get destroyed. Innocent motorists and pedestrians, especially on the Great East Road in LUSAKA and the Jumbo Drive in Quito, always get the biggest blow during student riots.
The students need to understand that they can't be where they are without the taxpayer money. And it is us, the taxpayers, who are suffering, paying for those taxes so that the students can have access to the education that they require. It's a misdemeanor one on their own consciences and on what they stand for and what the institution of the University of Zambia stands for. So they're doing a very big disfavor, to the students who are working hard, genuinely trying to make a life for themselves. So I would urge the students, as a private citizen, that they need to take take life with the blows that it comes with, and they need to refrain and find better options of expressing themselves than destroying taxpayers' money. We work hard for this property, so it's unfortunate that they can be tend to behave in a way that does not bear what the institution of the University of Zambia stands for. So it's quite unfortunate, but it's also very, 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 very regrettable.
Then they even start, affecting some other people who are innocent, especially the vehicles that are passing through the Great East Road. It's not good.
Like the last week situation, I was inconvenienced for 2 hours as I was going home, and it's quite hectic. I mean, you are from work and you are tired, and then you are on the road for another 2 hours.
The University of Zambia Council and Senate has strongly condemned the students' riotous behavior, which culminated into the recent closure of the institution. This is because the closure of the university is disadvantaging students on self-sponsorship.
I would like, on behalf of the Council of the University of Zambia, as well as the Senate, condemn the behavior by the students. We do not expect them, with their intellect, to conduct themselves in the manner that they did. And students are organized through their union. They have representatives, but they did not even follow their own code of conduct and their own procedures, and decided to take to the street, and thereby interfering with the normal, day-to-day lives of innocent citizens, interrupting businesses, and even interrupting the academic and professional staff. at the University of Zambia. So we condemn their actions. We are appealing to the government to consider reopening the university in as short as time as possible, so that we don't rob the labor market of skills that should be going into the labor market in a few years, and so that we also maintain the reputation of our highest institute of learning, especially in view of the fact that we are celebrating 50 years of existence as University of Zambia this year.
Whenever the students riot, police are quickly deployed to maintain law and order. But the students are accusing the police of unprofessionalism in responding to the riots.
I believe the police officers, they are there to maintain order and peace in our nation. And this is a learning institution. This is a school, and it is a big institution that we have in our country, Zambia. Quite all right, if someone does something which is not right and order is to be maintained, order is not to be maintained by the way of violence. The way the police officers conducted their arrangements, I believe there's need to sit down. They come up with a strategic plan. How do we maintain order? But instead, what we saw was something else.
But the police public relations unit say they cannot maintain law and order and protect members of the public by merely looking at the rioting students. The public relations unit explains that the police are at times forced to exert minimum force on the students when they try to retaliate.
You can't just police students by looking at them. So as such, you have to apply minimum force. Minimum force is something that can make you be able to police. In this sense, we usually use tear gas. Okay, we have to tear gas the students to disperse them. But then we have situations where after they've advanced, and probably you push them back into campus, they come with stones. They start stoning motorists. They start stoning us as police officers. So we can't just look at them as police, because we can't just look at them simply because they are students. When law is being broken, we don't have to look at faces. We don't have to look at individuals as students.
On the other hand, government feels the university is now vulnerable to external subversives. The Ministry of Higher Education feels the students are allegedly being misled by some opposition political parties.
The opposition are trying to take an advantage of the economical situation in the country to try and beef up their numbers. But I've said students should not be used as a ransom to try and beef up the numbers. It should not be like that. Let the students alone. Let the students complete their studies. After all, don't we say they are our future leaders? If we disturb them the way they have been disturbed now, what sort of leaders are we going to have in the future?
The police have since confirmed the involvement of some opposition political parties in student riots. The police public relations unit says 10 of the people who were apprehended for riotous behavior during the recent CBU riots were discovered to be political party cadres from a named party.
2 weeks ago, we had a riot on the Copper Belt, and all of them appeared in court. The unfortunate part was, amongst the students that were apprehended, there were 10 non-students who were cadres. So that raises a lot of concern among us in that once students decide to riot or demonstrate, there are people that take advantage of the students' desperation.
The Southern Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes, SACOD, have a solution to the problems in curbing the riots at the two institutions of higher learning.
We believe that it is absolutely important for the government to provide platforms of constructive engagement between them and the students' stakeholders, students themselves and or management within various higher learning institutions. and be in a position to address all the issues that are never really addressed until when you have riotous behavior which has been seen in the last few days, which of course is regrettable and is unfortunate. And if we can avoid it, it has to stop completely.
The University of Zambia Students' Union, UNZA, and some UNZA students also have ideas on how best government can deal with the challenges surrounding them.
One, especially meal allowances, they should pay more attention. Infrastructure, they should also pay more attention. Two, also trying to sponsor these high learning institutions, because like last time when you had the problem of results not being released, they were saying that actually no, the institution is not well funded. Let them fund it.
If the government has to say, we'll be doing this on such a day, on such a month, let them respond according to their pledges.
But government cannot set a date on which to release allowances to students. This is because of the monotonous and bureaucratic process in the collection of revenue.
It's not possible to fix the date because we can only pay when the tax man has brought the money to the Minister of Finance. And to accuse the Minister of Education or Higher Education that is incompetent is failing to understand the process. Because I don't touch the money. My job ends at passing the budget. There is no money that sits in the Minister of Finance account. The money is collected from the taxes. When people pay taxes, the money comes into the Minister of Finance as revenue. And the Minister of Finance will look at its expenditure and disperse the money that has been collected. And this is the monthly arrangement. It's a process that takes place every month.
The ministry is, however, appealing to the students not to abuse the bursary sponsorship.
This is a privilege, it's not a right. So talking about what is the permanent, I think it's the students themselves to realize that we cannot go to school, we cannot go to university to go and do battles with the police. No, that's not meant, the universities are not meant for that. You know, these good universities, universities like Harvard University, Yale University, Oxford University, they have good names because of the people there who are manning the institutions and the students themselves. So I'm not going to say that by us migrating from bursaries to students' loan, we could solve this problem. We might not solve this problem if the students do not want to learn. As government, yes, we are working very hard to migrate from bursary to students' loans. But that cannot be a guarantee if the students do not know the reason why they are in the institutions of higher learning.
Well, that's all we could manage to put together on today's program. Thank you so much for being part of the program. Join us next week for another interesting program. I've been your host, Masao Somkwayaya. Pleasant viewing.